When you allow others to take advantage of your generosity, you reinforce a cycle of exploitation. It's not always intentional on their part, but it becomes habitual. People notice patterns. When you say yes despite being overburdened, when you agree to things that compromise your values, or when you accommodate at the expense of your well-being, these small concessions, when compounded over time, create a version of you that even you may not recognize, a version that quietly endures instead of boldly thriving. And here's the harsh truth. The world doesn't reward martyrdom, it rewards clarity, strength, and self-respect. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you consistently showed up for someone and when the tables turned, they didn't reciprocate? It's a sobering experience. And yet, this is not an indictment of them. It's a reflection of how you've allowed the relationship to evolve. The harsh but liberating reality is that people will treat you in the way you permit them to. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates that let the right people in and keep exploitation out. Let me share a simple example. Imagine a colleague who repeatedly asks for your help with their tasks. Knowing you'll say yes. At first, it feels good to assist. You might even feel needed. But over time, their reliance grows and your resentment builds. What started as a kind gesture morphs into an unspoken obligation. Now ask yourself, at what point did you fail to say, I'd love to help, but I have my own priorities to handle? That one conversation could have altered the dynamic entirely, preserving both your energy and the respect within the relationship. This tendency to overextend often comes from a place of insecurity, a fear of being disliked, of being labeled selfish, or of facing confrontation. But let me tell you something vital. True strength lies in your ability to face these fears head on. When you say no to others, you're not just refusing a task, you're saying yes to yourself. You're acknowledging your worth and prioritizing your values. And the irony? People often respect you more for it. Respect grows not from endless compliance, but from the quiet confidence of someone who knows their limits and isn't afraid to enforce them. Practicality is key here. Start small. If someone asks for your time and you're already stretched thin, pause. Instead of immediately agreeing, respond with something like, let me check my schedule and get back to you. This simple tactic buys you time to assess whether you truly have the capacity or are simply defaulting to your people-pleasing instincts. Journaling can also be transformative. Spend a few minutes each day reflecting on moments where you felt taken advantage of or overcommitted. Write down how you could have handled those situations differently and commit to acting on those insights moving forward. Now let's consider the external impact. When you establish boundaries, you're not just protecting yourself, you're teaching others how to value you. You're setting a standard of mutual respect, and by doing so, you give others permission to do the same in their own lives. It's a ripple effect. The clearer your boundaries, the healthier your relationships become. People know where they stand with you, and the relationships that remain are built on mutual understanding rather than silent resentment. But let me caution you, setting boundaries is not a one-time act. It's a practice. There will be pushback. Those who have grown accustomed to your unyielding generosity may resist. Some relationships may even fade away, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk alongside you on your journey to self-respect. What matters is that you're walking that path authentically and unapologetically. Okay? In the end, the act of prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. It allows you to show up fully, not as a depleted version of yourself, but as someone who is grounded, confident, and capable of contributing meaningfully to the world around you. So, the next time you're faced with a choice between pleasing others or honoring yourself, ask, which decision aligns with the person I aspire to be? And remember, every time you choose to respect yourself, you're taking a step closer to becoming that person. When you learn to stop being too nice to those who exploit your kindness, you unlock a version of yourself that is not only strong, but also deeply authentic. And that version of you, the one who respects themselves enough to set limits, has the power to change not just your life, but also the way others view their own. So take that step, choose yourself, and watch as the world begins to follow your lead. It's crucial to understand that being too nice often stems from a deep psychological and emotional pattern, one that's rooted in the fear of rejection or conflict. It's not that being kind is wrong. Kindness, after all, is one of the greatest virtues we can offer to the world. But when kindness turns into submission, When it morphs into a willingness to sacrifice your own needs, values, and well-being to avoid upsetting others, it becomes a form of self-betrayal. And here's the unsettling truth, people can sense it. Those who exploit others are remarkably adept at identifying the individuals least likely to push back, least likely to say no, and most likely to absorb the burdens that aren't theirs to carry. Imagine this, you're in a group project, whether at work, school, or within a community. One person continually drops the ball, leaving their responsibilities undone, knowing full well that you'll step in to pick up the pieces. At first, it might feel noble to take on the extra work. You convince yourself that it's for the greater good or that it's easier to do it yourself and to confront them. But what's really happening here? You're enabling their irresponsibility, allowing their lack of accountability to grow unchecked. Worse, you're teaching them, whether you realize it or not, that your time, effort, and boundaries are secondary to their convenience. This dynamic doesn't just apply to group projects. It plays out in friendships, romantic relationships, family dynamics, and even casual interactions. When you consistently prioritize others at the expense of yourself, you erode the foundation of mutual respect. What starts as a small compromise can snowball into a pattern where you're perpetually bending to the will of others while your needs remain unmet. And let's be honest, over time this breeds resentment. You begin to feel used, undervalued, even invisible. Yet you may struggle to express this because deep down there's a fear that asserting yourself will lead to rejection or conflict. That fear keeps you trapped in a cycle of overgiving and underreceiving. So how do you break free? First, you must confront the underlying fear of rejection. Ask yourself, why do I believe that saying no will make me less worthy in someone else's eyes? Often this fear is tied to past experiences, times when setting boundaries may have been met with anger, disappointment, or withdrawal. But here's the thing, the people who genuinely care about you, who truly value your presence in their lives, won't abandon you for asserting yourself. In fact, they'll respect you more for it. Those who react negatively to your boundaries, they're often the ones who are benefiting the most from your lack of them. Now, let's talk about how to communicate boundaries effectively. It starts with clarity. Be honest with yourself about what you're willing and able to give. If someone asks for your time, energy, or resources, don't feel pressured to answer immediately. Pause, reflect, consider whether their request aligns with your values, priorities, and capacity. If it doesn't, respond calmly but firmly. For example, you might say, I understand this is important to you, but I can't commit to that right now. Notice how this approach acknowledges their need without invalidating your own. Another critical element is consistency. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time act, it's an ongoing practice. The first time you assert yourself, it might feel uncomfortable. You might second-guess yourself, wondering if you were too harsh or if you should have made an exception. But each time you honor your boundaries, you strengthen your self-respect. Over time, this becomes second nature, and the people in your life learn to respect the limits you've set. Let's not forget the external impact of this transformation. When you stop being too nice to those who exploit your kindness, you inspire others to do the same. You demonstrate what it looks like to value yourself without devaluing others. You show that it's possible to be both kind and assertive, both compassionate and firm. This doesn't just change your relationships, it changes the way others view their own capacity to set boundaries and demand respect. So here's the takeaway. Your time, energy, and well-being are precious. They are not infinite resources to be given away without consideration. By prioritizing yourself, you're not being selfish, you're being responsible. You're creating a version of yourself that is strong, resilient, and capable of contributing meaningfully to the world, not out of obligation, but out of genuine choice. As we draw this point to a close, reflect on this. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to something that could nourish you. And every time you say no to exploitation, you're making space for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that truly align with your values. So choose wisely, set your boundaries, and watch as the world begins to align itself with the strength and clarity you've cultivated within. Exploitation rarely presents itself as an obvious force. It sneaks in quietly, often disguised as flattery, friendship, or dependency. Recognizing when you're being taken advantage of requires clarity of thought and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It's not about becoming paranoid or suspicious of everyone you encounter. It's about developing a sharper sense of discernment. Let's start by identifying the patterns. Have you noticed a recurring theme in certain relationships where you're always the one who gives more, whether it's time, energy, emotional support, or resources? This might look like a friend who only calls you when they need a favor, a colleague who repeatedly asks for your help but never reciprocates, or even a family member who places endless demands on you while offering little acknowledgement of your efforts. These behaviors may feel small in isolation, but over time, they weave a pattern that drains your energy and erodes your self-worth. Why do these patterns persist? Often it's because exploiters know how to push the right buttons. They may appeal to your sense of guilt, saying things like, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Or they may praise your generosity to keep you hooked. They might even downplay your boundaries by accusing you of being selfish if you try to say no. This emotional manipulation is designed to make you feel responsible for their well-being while neglecting your own. The first step in breaking free from these patterns is to recognize your role in them. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about taking responsibility for the dynamics you allow. Ask yourself, why do I keep tolerating this behavior? Is it because I'm afraid of conflict? Do I believe that my worth is tied to how much I can do for others? Often the root of the problem lies in an internal narrative that convinces you that saying yes is easier than dealing with the discomfort of saying no. But here's the truth. Tolerating exploitation doesn't just harm you, it harms the other person as well. By enabling their behavior, you're reinforcing their lack of accountability and preventing them from growing. True relationships, whether they're personal, professional, or familial, are built on mutual respect, not one-sided dependence. So how do you start recognizing and dismantling these patterns? Begin by observing how you feel after interactions with certain people. Do you feel energized, valued, and supported? Or do you feel drained, resentful, and taken for granted? Your emotions are often the clearest indicators of whether a relationship is balanced or exploitative. Once you've identified the imbalance, it's time to set boundaries. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting people off or becoming confrontational. It means communicating your limits clearly and consistently. For example, if a friend constantly asks you to do things that inconvenience you, respond with something like, "I'd love to help, but I'm unable to this time." Notice the use of positive language. It acknowledges their need while asserting your limit. Over time, the people who respect you will adapt to your boundaries, while those who don't will naturally fade away. It's also important to remember that not everyone who oversteps your boundaries does so maliciously. Sometimes people aren't aware of how their actions affect you. This is why honest communication is so vital. By expressing your feelings calmly and assertively, you give others the opportunity to adjust their behavior. However, if someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries despite your efforts to communicate them, it's a sign that they value their convenience over your well-being. And that's not a relationship worth maintaining. Let's take this a step further. Recognizing patterns of exploitation isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about cultivating a mindset of fairness and accountability that can ripple outward. When you refuse to tolerate exploitation, you're sending a message to the world about what you stand for. You're modeling a form of self-respect that inspires others to do the same. Imagine a workplace where employees hold each other accountable instead of taking advantage of one another's kindness. Or a family where every member contributes equally instead of relying on one person to carry the emotional load. This is the broader impact of breaking free from exploitative patterns. You're not just improving your own life, you're contributing to a culture of mutual respect. So, where do we go from here? Start by looking inward. Examine the relationships in your life and ask yourself, are these connections based on mutual respect and reciprocity, or are they one-sided? Be honest, even if the answers are uncomfortable. Then commit to making changes, whether that means setting boundaries, having difficult conversations, or in some cases, walking away. And here's the final thought to reflect on. Every time you allow yourself to be exploited, you're giving away a piece of your energy, your dignity, and your potential. But every time you stand up for yourself, you're reclaiming that energy. You're building a life that reflects your values and your worth. And in doing so, you're not just fixing your own world, you're challenging others to do the same. There's a common misconception that setting boundaries is an act of selfishness. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that saying no is somehow unkind, that asserting ourselves might hurt someone else's feelings or damage the relationship. But the truth is, boundaries are not walls meant to isolate us. They are bridges that allow for healthier, more balanced connections. Without them, we risk losing our sense of self in the pursuit of pleasing others. Why is it so difficult to set boundaries? For many, it stems from the fear of being perceived as rude or ungrateful. Perhaps you worry about confrontation, or maybe you've internalized the belief that your worth is tied to how much you can do for others. These beliefs are deeply ingrained, but they are also deeply flawed. When you fail to set boundaries, you're not being kind. You're allowing others to encroach on your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Think about it. If you're constantly saying yes to everyone else, what are you saying no to in your own life? Are you sacrificing your goals, your peace of mind, or your ability to recharge? This is the hidden cost of being overly accommodating. It diminishes your ability to show up as your best self, both for you and for those who genuinely value you. Setting boundaries starts with self-awareness. You need to understand what your limits are before you can communicate them effectively. Reflect on the situations that leave you feeling drained or resentful. Maybe it's a colleague who expects you to handle their workload, a friend who treats your generosity as a given, or a family member who makes endless demands on your time. Identify these patterns and recognize that it's not selfish to prioritize your well-being, it's necessary. Once you've clarified your boundaries, the next step is to communicate them. This can be challenging, especially if you're used to avoiding conflict, but remember, boundaries are about clarity, not confrontation. Use calm, assertive language to express your limits. For example, if someone frequently interrupts your personal time, you might say, "I appreciate you reaching out, but I need some time for myself right now. Let's reconnect later." Notice how this statement is firm yet respectful. It acknowledges their needs while affirming your own. The key to effective boundaries is consistency. It's not enough to set them once and hope for the best. You need to reinforce them every time they're tested. This doesn't mean being rigid or inflexible. Life requires compromise, and there will be moments when you choose to go above and beyond for someone. But these moments should be the exception, not the rule. Boundaries are about creating a baseline of respect, not about shutting people out. So, of course, setting boundaries can sometimes trigger negative reactions. People who are used to benefiting from your lack of limits may resist the change. They might accuse you of being selfish, distant, or even unkind. It's crucial to remember that their reaction says more about them than it does about you. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-respect. And those who genuinely care about you will come to understand and appreciate your need for balance. Let's ground this in a practical example. Imagine you have a friend who constantly expects you to listen to their problems but never reciprocates when you need support. Every time you answer their late-night calls or rearrange your plans to accommodate them, you're reinforcing the imbalance. Now, imagine instead that you say, "I care about you and I want to support you, but I also need to take care of myself. I'm not always available, but I'm here for you when I can." This simple shift in communication can transform the dynamic, encouraging mutual respect and understanding. And what happens when you start setting boundaries? You reclaim your energy. You begin to attract people who respect you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. You develop a deeper sense of self-worth, knowing that your value isn't contingent on meeting everyone else's expectations. Most importantly, you create space for the things that truly matter: your passions, your relationships, your well-being. So here's the takeaway. Boundaries are not barriers, they're blueprints for healthier relationships. They allow you to give from a place of abundance rather than obligation, to connect with others without losing yourself in the process. The next time you hesitate to set a boundary, ask yourself, what am I protecting by saying yes to this? And by setting boundaries without guilt, you're not just fixing an immediate problem, you're laying the foundation for a life of authenticity and respect. And in doing so, you're teaching others to do the same. Boundaries don't just benefit you, they create a ripple effect, inspiring others to honor their own limits and respect yours. That's not selfishness, that's wisdom in action. There's a truth about human interactions that many of us struggle to face. Not everyone who enters your life does so with good intentions. Some people see your kindness as an opportunity, a tool they can exploit for their own benefit. These individuals often operate subtly, their manipulation disguised as flattery, dependency, or even friendship. Recognizing these patterns isn't easy. It requires a sharp awareness and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about others and perhaps about yourself. Manipulation often thrives in silence. The manipulator counts on your fear of confrontation, your desire to keep the peace, and perhaps most dangerously, your need for approval. You might notice the signs: someone who always seems to need a favor but disappears when you're the one in need, Or maybe it's a colleague who shifts their responsibilities onto you, relying on your unwillingness to say no. It could even be a loved one who consistently pushes boundaries, using guilt or emotional appeals to control your behavior. The first step in breaking free from manipulation is to acknowledge its presence. This can be difficult, particularly if the manipulator is someone close to you. But ask yourself this: does this relationship leave you feeling empowered, or does it drain you? Do you feel free to voice your thoughts, or do you find yourself tiptoeing around the other person's emotions? These are the questions that reveal the truth. Once you've identified a manipulative dynamic, the next step is to set firm boundaries. For instance, if someone continually asks for favors but offers nothing in return, you might say, "I'm unable to help this time. I've been taking on a lot and I need to focus on my own responsibilities." Notice how this response is clear, respectful, and firm. It doesn't leave room for negotiation. Manipulators often test boundaries, so it's crucial to remain consistent. Don't let guilt or pressure sway you from protecting your well-being. Breaking free from manipulation also requires a shift in mindset. Many of us have been taught to equate kindness with self-sacrifice, believing that saying no makes us unkind or selfish. This belief is not only false, it's dangerous. Kindness is not about allowing others to take advantage of you. It's about acting with integrity and respect for both yourself and others. When you stand up against manipulation, you're not being cruel, you're valuing yourself enough to demand fairness and reciprocity. Let me share an example to ground this in reality. Imagine you have a friend who constantly borrows money but never repays it, always promising, "I'll pay you back next week." Each time you hesitate to say no, telling yourself it's just a small amount or that they really need it. But over time, these small amounts add up, not just financially, but emotionally. You start to feel resentment, and the friendship becomes a source of stress rather than support. Now imagine you take a different approach. The next time they ask, you say, "I've helped you several times, and I need to see that effort is being made to pay back what's owed before I can lend more." This response is not only reasonable, it's necessary. Recognizing manipulation is also about examining your role in the dynamic. Are you someone who avoids conflict at all costs? Do you derive a sense of worth from being needed, even if it's at your own expense? These are hard questions, but they're essential. Breaking free from manipulation isn't just about changing the other person's behavior, it's about changing your own patterns of thought and action. As you begin to assert yourself, you may notice resistance. Manipulators often react with anger, or guilt tripping, or even an outright denial. They may accuse you of being selfish or unkind, playing on the very fears that kept you silent in the first place. This is where your resolve will be tested. Remember, standing up for yourself is not out of betrayal of kindness. The beauty of breaking free from manipulation is that it doesn't just liberate you, it transforms your relationships. When you stop tolerating manipulation, you make room for connections built on mutual respect and honesty. You create a space where kindness is given freely, not extracted under duress. And most importantly, you reclaim your energy, your time, and your sense of self. So here's the question I leave you with. Are you willing to face the discomfort of confrontation to protect your peace? Are you prepared to demand more from your relationships, to refuse to be a passive participant in your own life? Breaking free from manipulation is not easy. It requires courage, clarity, and a commitment to your own well-being. But the reward is worth it. A life where your kindness is valued, not exploited, and where your relationships lift you up instead of pulling you down. One of the most difficult yet necessary realizations we face in life is that relationships are not just about giving, they are about balance. Balance in effort, in respect, and in value. When you give endlessly without receiving anything in return, the dynamic ceases to be a relationship and becomes exploitation. But the responsibility of redefining this dynamic lies not only with the other person, it begins with you. It begins with your willingness to recognize when the balance has been lost and your courage to take steps to restore it. Think about the relationships in your life right now. Are there people who consistently take without giving back? Are there those who lean on your kindness without ever offering support in return? Now ask yourself this: why do you allow it? Often we find ourselves trapped in these cycles because we've been conditioned to believe that love, friendship, or loyalty means sacrifice. But true connection isn't built on one person's endless sacrifice. It's built on mutual respect and reciprocity. Imagine a scale. When a relationship is balanced, both parties contribute to the scale, keeping it level. This doesn't mean that every action is measured or that every kindness is immediately returned. It means that over time, there is a sense of fairness, a give and take that fosters trust and mutual growth. But when one person consistently gives while the other takes, the scale tips. And as it tips, resentment begins to build. What once may have been a source of joy and support becomes a drain on your energy, your confidence, and your sense of self. Now, consider this. If you were to redefine your relationships to prioritize mutual respect, what would change? It starts with setting boundaries. For example, if someone constantly asks for your time but never offers theirs, you might say, I've noticed I've been giving a lot of my time to help you lately, and I need to make sure I have enough time for myself as well. Notice that this isn't about creating conflict. It's about saying, I value this relationship, but I also value myself. Redefining relationships also requires an honest evaluation of your own behavior. Are you someone who struggles to ask for help even when you need it? Do you downplay your own needs because you're afraid of being seen as selfish? These tendencies can contribute to unbalanced dynamics, making it easier for others to take advantage of you. The antidote is vulnerability. It's being willing to say, this is what I need, and trusting that the right people will rise to meet you. Let's not forget that redefining relationships isn't just about identifying what's wrong, it's about fostering what's right. When you prioritize mutual respect and reciprocity, you create space for deeper, more meaningful connections. These are the relationships where both people feel seen, valued, and supported. They are the relationships that enrich your life rather than deplete it. And the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic confrontation. It's about small, consistent actions, saying no when you need to, expressing gratitude when it's deserved, and always treating yourself with the respect you expect from others. There's a profound sense of empowerment that comes from redefining your relationships in this way. You begin to realize that you are not at the mercy of others' expectations or demands. You have the agency to shape the dynamics of your connections, to ensure that they serve not only the other person, but also yourself. And as the people who truly value you will stay, and those who are only there to take advantage of your kindness will fall away. But let's take this one step further. Redefining relationships isn't just about personal gain, it's about setting an example for others. When you demand respect and reciprocity in your interactions, you show others what healthy relationships look like. You become a model of balance and integrity, inspiring those around you to reassess their own connections. In this way, your personal transformation ripples outward, creating a culture of mutual respect in your social circles and beyond. So, as you reflect on this idea, ask yourself, what kind of relationships do you want to cultivate? Are you willing to let go of those that drain you to make room for those that uplift you? Are you ready to demand the respect you deserve, not just from others, but also from yourself? Remember, every relationship you have is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. If you respect and value yourself, you'll naturally seek out connections that mirror those qualities. As we conclude this thought, let me leave you with a challenge. Over the next week, take one step toward redefining a relationship in your life. It could be setting a boundary, expressing a need, or even ending a connection that no longer serves you. Whatever it is, do it with clarity, with courage, and with the knowledge that you are worthy of relationships that bring balance, joy, and growth into your life. By taking this step, you're not just changing your relationships, you're changing the world, one connection at a time.